everybody. Welcome to Friday Bingo. Seems like it's been a while since we've had Friday Bingo. And I'd like to welcome David. And David's going to be our tour guide today, which I love even more.
Hey,
So,
everybody.
welcome, David. So, David has brought to us today the 15 Nations Tour. And the reason why this is very interesting that he brought this today is for those of you that have signed up for WikiTree games, that's coming up as well. So, we're just talking globally today. All day for both bingos, we're talking globally. I have got the bingo card already loaded in the chat for the very first one. Thank you guys for joining us today, as well as the pages. There's two pages for the 15 Nations Tour. So let me bring up the first one, David. And what is the 15 Nations Tour?
Okay, the 15 Nations Tour, for those that are not familiar with it, we started up back in January. One of our WikiTree members, posted a G2G inquiry asking if we could highlight the leaders of the world, the current leaders of the world. And we thought that was a cool idea until it occurred to us that the leaders of the world are all living notables, which means nobody could access their profiles except those that are on the trusted list. So we played around with it and we thought, in honor of WikiTree's 15th birthday, which is coming up in November, and we're celebrating throughout the year, we would choose 15 nations. And for each of those nations, we would choose 15 notables, and we would we would create their profiles, make connections when we can, add family members when we can, develop the profiles. And these countries that we have chosen are countries that you typically would not find, not only on WikiTree, where they have a low presence, but around the genealogical community. You can see there some of the first countries: India, Ukraine, Kenya. If you go to Ancestry, if you go to Family Search, you're not going to find a lot of Kenyan records. So the challenge here is to take a country that we know nothing about and figure it out. Figure out not only the history, determining 15 notables from these countries, and then how do we do genealogical research. And it's been a real adventure. We're now on our 12th country. No, I'm sorry, we're on our 11th country, which is Syria. And again, I would venture to guess that most WikiTreeers do not know a lot about Syrian genealogy. And those of us that are on the team, including myself, know zero about Syrian genealogy. But we go in and like I said, we figure it out.
I think that's a
And
good point. You don't have to know anything about the country,
absolutely,
how to research it. David gives you a list of names as well, so you don't have to go find somebody. He makes it real easy for you. And I think that's important to point out that, everybody's kind of flying in here and learning as you go. And you've got a couple more to come
yeah.
up.
And we've got four more. We do them for 3 weeks. So we still have 12 weeks left. Our last day is going to be on WikiTree Day. That's when we'll wrap it up. And then we got some surprises that we'll talk about a little bit later this evening about what's coming up after the 50 nations are completed. After we've done our 15th nation, we've got some ideas in the works for
Big
next year.
surprise.
Big surprise.
Yeah. So you guys got to come
so
back.
you have to tune in. Yeah, you got to tune in tonight if you want to hear the big surprise. Yeah, and as you were saying, you don't have to know anything coming in. If you're interested in learning something new, every 3 weeks I pick another country, and I don't tell anybody in advance. On the third Tuesday, we'll do a wrap-up tour of Syria in another week and a half or so. And during that wrap-up tour on YouTube, I announce what our next country is going to be and who the 50 notables are. So even our team that's been with us from the beginning have no idea where we're going after Syria.
And you started literally the first few days of the year. So you've been doing this for a while with the team.
Yeah, we started on January 2nd.
Do you know the next four? Have you already?
Do I know the next one?
Yeah.
Okay. At this point, the answer is yes. I did not. Well, the answer is pretty much yes. I did not know. I did not plan 15 countries in advance. I've been playing it by ear. the United Nations, interestingly enough, divides the world into 15 regions. So that worked out real well for me in narrowing it down. Um, I I picked one from each region. Um, what I do is, as we're going through the 3 weeks, I pick the next country from that region. And some of it has to do with what we've been doing. If we've been doing, for example, Arabic research, which is really not as difficult as it sounds, but then I go to another region and it happens to also be Arabic, I may push that back because we just finished that. So maybe we'll go to Latin America instead, or we'll go up, to Africa or whatever. So I try to move it around a little bit. Um, and usually I've only known up to the last, maybe the second week of a tour, I pick the next
The
country.
next one.
Now that we're
Mm,
getting to the end and I've only got a few left, I kind of have planned, how we're gonna wrap it up. So I think, I know. However, here's the deal with that. Since I don't know anything about these countries, I pick a country and I go find 15 notables. I've run into a problem where I can't find 15 notables for a particular country, and I've had to switch country at the last minute, because what we think of as notables, I do try to keep a variety, and we can talk about that, but a variety of careers and claims to fame. So you're not going to find 15 politicians. You're going to find some actors, some sports heroes, scientists, authors, archaeologists, all kinds of things, explorers. Some of these newer countries, or they're not newer countries, but they're newer. Well, they may be officially newer countries, although they may have been around for hundreds of years in some, as a colony, in some sort of other entity. But a lot of countries, for example, if you'll just scroll down a little,
mhm.
Sandy, and I'll show you. Now, India and Argentina have been around a long time, but India didn't gain its independence from England until, I believe, the 1960s. Argentina was a colony. Ukraine has only been around since the 1990s. They were part of the Soviet Union. Um, Now, Kenya is a country that's been around for hundreds of years in one entity or another. However, um, they didn't have sports heroes and actors and actresses and scientists up until very recently, and a lot of those are still living. So trying to find, we only work with, well, no, I won't say only, we primarily try to work with deceased individuals for privacy and access reasons.
Hey,
So,
let me pause you real quick. So, 'cause, as you know, that David is a project lead with Scott on the Notables. So while you're here, we are talking about the 15 Nations tour, but he's also talking about finding notables for those countries. So if anybody has a quick question about notables as well, go ahead and feel free to drop it in chat, because I love it when David comes. He can answer a lot of different questions for us, not just the 15 Nations tour that we're talking about. But don't forget, David also revitalized, brought back to life the U.S. Governor's Project as well. And he started, my gosh, has it been 2 months now? The sports notables.
sports
So if
notables.
you have a question about notables in general, feel free to drop it in the chat and we'll make
Yep.
sure that we see it. But I can see where it could be difficult because notables from WikiTree do pull from Wikipedia. And some of the smaller countries, probably the priorities of creating their notables on Wikipedia is low. As opposed to us, if there's a rock star or pop star, it's on Wikipedia in 10 seconds flat. So I can
Yeah.
imagine where that's challenging.
So Scott, I joined Scott Fulkerson on the Notables, I think back in January, earlier this year at some point. And prior to that, Scott was running the thing by himself, and that was just overwhelming. So um, Scott has asked me to come in and focus on bringing more activities to the Notables. Scott's primary role, and it's amazing how time consuming this turns out to be,
And
is
how
to
long he's
oversee the
been
living.
doing it. Yeah, he's been doing it
Yeah,
a long
he
time by
he
himself.
oversees the living. I mean, we both do, but he's more in, he kind of takes that role of overseeing the living notables. We get dozens of emails every day of people wanting to be on the trusted list. Um, the rules for the trusted list are basically you can get on the trusted list for one of two reasons. Either you're an immediate family member and you can prove it, or you have a very specific reason, typically working with a project. Our Australia project is working on developing this profile. Can I have access? And we'll probably give you access for that reason. Um, but we get dozens of calls saying, I'm a 14th cousin. Can I get on the trusted list? Well, there's no reason to be on the trusted list. You can see everything. They're open profiles. Um, when Tina Turner died, we must have had 25 cousins asking us for access. Um, we get people for Elvis and Marilyn Monroe, and I think Elvis is still alive. I think he's, his
I
profiles
need to
needs
add more
correcting.
kids, right?
Yeah, so we get all kinds of stuff like that. Um, and Scott is in charge of deciding who gets in and who gets out. The other thing is a lot of people will have genuine information to give us, and they'll say, I've found the parents. Can you connect them? They don't need to be on the trusted list, but they'll give us the links, and then Scott goes in and fixes those. But again, we get a dozen of those messages every day, um, which for one day is not maybe a lot, but when it's day after day after day, it's a lot. So when Scott was doing that all by himself, he really didn't have time to do any kind of projects or challenges. Um, so anyway, that's something that we're focusing on, and we're kind of in our infancy of doing that. But as Sandy mentioned, we've got the Governor's Project, which is actually under it's notables, but it's under the United States Project heading. But we have the Sports Project where we've done baseball. We're currently doing a tennis challenge. Um, we have an individual who's created a pro wrestling challenge,
I saw
and
that. That was
we're
pretty cool.
connecting some of yeah, we're connecting some of the legendary WWF, WWE.
And I will tell you, the
Um,
Appalachia Project brought some NASCARs
and
to drivers to this
mhm,
month with our
we've
challenge.
got
So
some
I'm thrilled
NASCARs.
about the sports
Yeah, Sandy's working on some
hockey.
hockey stuff. We've got a member working on some Super Bowl football. So the sports is going really well, and we have a little less well-known new project of it's an entertainment project where we got links to various. We've got I think a Harry Potter link and a Star Trek link. They're just run by individual members, and we've also been doing some challenges on classic TV stars. So you might see that on G2G.
And of course,
And it's a
Disney. Most of us know
Mhm.
you from Disney.
Say that one. Oh,
Most
from
of us know
Disney?
from
Yes.
Disney. Yeah.
Yeah, Disney's been a little quiet, but that was how I got started was um, the classic Disney project, which is also linked under our entertainers. Um, and we focus on the voice actors for each of the I think it's the first 18 films from Snow White up to I don't recall at this point. I think it was Winnie the Pooh was the last
Okay.
1970s. So basically um, anything prior to where I grew up and wasn't interested. So all my favorite um,
Now, and I will
classic
point out too,
cartoons.
with notables, once a notable deceased, literally somebody's on G2G saying, "Hey, open them up." You guys do open up that profile as soon as you
Yes.
guys hear that. If you're living notable, it's locked. But as soon as they're deceased, literally that day, I've gone and seen you guys open them up like within 30 minutes, 60 minutes. You
Yeah.
open them up.
So we have some individuals that before I joined the project, I didn't quite understand this, but on G2G, if you follow our link, you'll see individuals that post so and so died today, so and so died
Mhm.
today. And when I first saw that, I thought, this is an awfully morbid group that so focused on who's dead. But that's why is what they're doing is notifying us to open up the
Your
profile.
profile.
And the way our members view it, different people have different opinions, but they want to honor these people. Somebody famous has passed away, and they want to make sure that they get their profile properly developed and get them connected. And it's a way of it's a tribute to them, I think. So yeah, and that's another thing that Scott oversees. Every time a famous person passes away, he goes in and opens it. Now, sometimes if it's a superstar like Tina Turner, where we start getting all those cousins wanting to come in and make changes, we'll keep it locked for a while. And then there are some, and I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but some controversial profiles that and it's a very small number, but that we keep closed indefinitely. If they're not kept by another project, but something
And I
like
think you
an Elvis.
mentioned Elvis too. I
Yeah,
think
Elvis.
Elvis,
I couldn't say for sure,
yeah,
but I would imagine that's the type where you start to get conspiracy theories and different things written on there. Maybe a Michael Jackson, those kinds.
yeah,
Again, I couldn't tell you for sure if those are locked or not. You can still see them, you just can't edit them. And if you want to edit them, and you have serious edits to make, you just let us know and we can discuss giving you access, or we can put the information in for you. So there's ways around it,
on that.
but it's really to prevent vandalism, because even though most members are going to be responsible, um, WikiTree's open to the public, so anybody can come in and
Can come in and,
start making changes, and we don't want that. So, but again, that's very rare that we
but you
don't
haven't.
open up
Well,
a
let's
project.
answer
So,
Vicky's question too. So, since you picked notables for these countries for the 15
yes.
nation tour, how do you choose the notables? Is there criteria?
So, okay, so when I opened up with India, there were criteria.
Hmm.
At this point, I've thrown all the criteria out the window because it just didn't work.
Now, this
Um,
is for the 15 nation tour only, though, right?
this is the 15 Nations
15
tour.
nations tour.
Yes,
Criteria. There is criteria for notables.
there
So
are.
we'll talk about both. So
Okay,
why do you throw the criteria out for India?
for India. Okay, so I don't know 15 famous people that are India. Now, one of the criteria is they have to be born in India.
Okay.
So, with very few exceptions, one or two throughout the whole tour, um, we're not doing people who were born somewhere else and moved to India. And I try to keep them people that became famous in India. So not just happened to be born there and then moved to the United States and became famous in the United States. Again, I've made exceptions, but back when I was doing India, that was kind of the criteria. So these are all people that were born and became famous in India. Most of them probably died in India at that point. They, again, for the most part, have to be deceased. The the exceptions to that is I always put the current head of state and head of government. So in India's case, they have a prime minister and a president who are living, and that was based on the initial request of the member that proposed this whole thing. Um, we didn't want to keep it strictly living people, but we do throw them in there. We try to get the parents on to WikiTree, and that way it gets accessible, and we've had some success with that. Interestingly, we've talked about this previously on our WikiTree on our 15 Nations presentations, that the world leaders seem to be the hardest ones to connect. And I think
Interesting.
worldwide, there is a much greater tendency for politicians to keep their personal life private than
Oh,
we have in the United States. It keeps their mystique up. If you know that they're just like everybody else, you may not be
mhm,
as submissive to their um, commands, which we
mhm.
try to steer against in the United States, and we know just about everything there is to know about our politicians if we choose to. Um, and our whole premise is that our politicians are just like everybody else, theoretically. That's not the case in other countries. For example, in Russia, Vladimir Putin, you know very little about his personal life except what he wants you to know. So he'll put pictures of himself out there doing all his athletics and those kinds of things because that's what he wants you to know about him. He doesn't want you to know about his marital problems, about the conflicts he has with his children or his crazy brother or sister's ex-husband or whatever, those things that
So you
come
just
up in our politics.
just the
So,
source. That's all you got. It's just the source. And no fantastic biography. You can only put so much of the facts.
for the leaders, or
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood your
Yeah,
question.
for like Putin, you can't really go into a lot of details, I imagine, because he
Well,
doesn't want it known either.
yeah, yeah. So it just depends on what sources are out there. They're harder to find. Sometimes they are. Um, sometimes we can find them, but my overall point was that it's the leaders that seem to be our least successful in terms of connections. We've been the
Connections.
least successful with our world leaders. The names you might know the most have actually been harder to connect than some of the lesser known. So going back to the original questions, how do I figure out the 15 notables? The first thing I do is Google famous people in India or famous Argentinians or whatever country, see what comes up on Google. In time, I've come up with a few websites that you can do searches for famous people from different countries. Um, Google, not Google, Wikipedia
Mhm.
post the number of languages that a famous person or that a notable that their profile appears in. If they have one or two pages, maybe they're not as famous, um, and which means that their information is not going to be as available. But if they've got 25 pages, a lot of these people that I've never heard of are not famous necessarily in the United States,
But they are in
but
their
they're
own
famous
country.
worldwide. If you look, I go to one site that measures the matrices on Wikipedia and determines who the most famous people are based on the number of hits and languages. The most famous president of the United States worldwide is Jimmy Carter.
Really?
And yes, because Jimmy Carter goes around the world with Habitat for Humanity, or did,
That's the point, yeah.
and they know him all around the world. Um, the ones in our country, they're famous, but people in the villages and small towns around the world really don't care
Mm.
about our politics as much as we think
As
they
we
do.
do.
Um,
Now, let me pause for a second. Now, I just want to mention that David's talking about how he picks for the 15 Nations tour, because this is a little different. Let's
mhm,
say that you're working with some of the more populated countries, England, Scotland,
yeah.
Canada, um, US, Mexico, some of the larger ones. What is for the Notables project in general? What are the basic criteria to make a person's profile notable?
So we have two types of notables. We have notables, well, basically, and we have living notables. So basically, deceased notables and living notables. The criteria is different. They're similar but different. The to be a notable, the simplest way to know if somebody's notable is they have a Wikipedia page, and that can be in any language. So when I'm doing, say, Ukrainian notables,
Mhm.
I may not find a page on the English Wikipedia, but if I go over to the Ukrainian Wikipedia, and they've got a page there, then they're considered notable. Now, a little more detailed explanation of that is the rule actually states that they have to be eligible for a Wikipedia page.
Oh,
So if
okay.
you've got a famous person who doesn't have a page, but on Wikipedia, but they should, it's just nobody's created it yet, but they meet all of Wikipedia's criteria, then they meet our criteria as well. Um, it doesn't come up much that you find a famous person that doesn't have a Wikipedia page, but if you feel that you do, you can look through the criteria on Wikipedia and um, and then contact either Scott or myself, and we'll let you know if the person qualifies. Um, that's really the only criteria. Now, the flip side of that also, though, is if you see a famous person with a page on Wikipedia, and let's say it's got one, maybe a two-sentence biography, and it's got one language,
Mm.
um, anybody can post on well, not anybody, but if you meet their criteria, you can post on Wikipedia. And some people put up profiles that are not necessarily that don't meet Wikipedia standards. And they will generally come down after a while, but it takes a while for Wikipedia to figure it out and go through their process and stuff. So there are people who appear on Wikipedia who do not qualify for Wikipedia's own criteria and therefore don't qualify for ours. We find that mostly with colonists who didn't do anything necessarily notable other than immigrate to the United States or colonial America. People will post ancestors and, um, he was the founder of this small town in Connecticut or whatever. And, that's impressive in and of itself, but it doesn't meet the criteria for notability.
Or on
And
Wikipedia either. You'll see that name on the town's Wikipedia page, but
yeah,
that does not qualify for that person to
Yes.
be a notable on WikiTree. I've had a lot of that question too, but they're on this page, and I would go look at it, and it's the name of the town or something
Hmm.
like that. Or,
Yes.
it could even be in sports. Sometimes we see that for newer sports, they haven't made their name yet. And
Yeah. Yeah.
Wikipedia has
Just
a
making
lot
the
of
team.
requirements.
Yeah. Just making the hockey team or whatever
Yeah,
doesn't make them a
it's not.
notable. They have to do something, notable, beyond getting hired.
And I will
Um,
say this too, because I worked on in the disasters project, and just because they were in a famous, let's say, airplane crash. And I'm sorry, this is kind of morbid, but this came up to me this year. The people that passed away were famous because they passed away in that crash, but they do not have their own Wikipedia page, but they have a page, a Wikipedia page that details the airplane crash. And for those of you that know a little bit about US, I'm talking about the Marshall University plane crash. So Scott was really fantastic walking us through our project through that, because no, we can't claim every football player that died in that crash as a notable. They were on a Wikipedia page, but not an individual one.
right.
It's
And we
it's
get that historically. We get that with shipwrecks.
yeah.
Not everybody on a famous shipwreck, the Lusitania, let's say, not every passenger is notable. The event was notable. The passengers themselves may or may not have been.
I love how you said
So,
that. So listen to what he said. The event was notable. So that was,
yeah.
that's pretty brilliant to kind of pull that.
And the same with, as I mentioned, the colonists. The colonist as a whole, the American colonists I'm referring to, um, the colonists as a whole were notable, but each individual does not necessarily have that. Um, and there's Kathy saying hi. I just referred to Kathy's
I know.
Super Bowl project coming up, so
Kathy's been doing
watch out for
a
that.
really fantastic job on the Super Bowl. That is a lot of detail that she put on there.
Yeah,
Okay, you
yeah,
guys ready to play
it's
some bingo? I think let me post a
yeah.
card. I
And
just
when we come back, I do want to touch on the living notables
Okay, good.
and the criteria for that.
And I just want to make sure if everybody will double check that you do have this correct bingo card. I might have accidentally labeled an earlier link. So just make sure that you have the one that ends in E6A, and we will go ahead and switch over to the bingo. This should be it. There we go. Same rules as always, guys. And if you're new, welcome to our bingo. What's going to happen is you're going to take that card, that link, bring it up, and use your mouse as the dabber. There are no free spaces in any of the games that you see today, because there's so much good stuff here that I didn't want to waste a little square. What you need to do to get bingo is vertical, diagonal, horizontal, and you just one. You don't need all of them. Just dab. If you click on a square and you did not mean to, just click on it again and it will remove it. If you've won in the past 6 months, you are not eligible to win until your 6-month anniversary from your last win. And I do have a sheet that has that information, but I'm also relying on you guys as well. The first person who gets the bingo and screams it at me in the bingo chat is the winner. And I just want to point out that for, I believe it's going to be WikiTree games, that you guys that know how to scream out bingo, you will have a head start for WikiTree games hangouts. So I'll just leave that to be a surprise. Okay, David, let's go ahead. And these are all names of notables
Yes, and
from the
give
15
me just
Nation
one
Tour.
chance to pull up my list here. I'm sorry, I should have been prepared here. Um, so for those that don't know the behind the scenes of bingo, we only typically probably get 15, 20 names before somebody wins, but Sandy makes me come up with 50 words. So I have to remember what all these things mean. But I'm going to pull up my list because I'm trying to remember who Ann Tenor Furman was. If you'll just give me 1 minute. Sorry about this.
And while you're doing that, I'll also point out John Tyner, my pal Irish John, has a very good point. He does have a coach builder ancestor. And when I say coach builder, I mean he built for the king and queen, their coach. He's not just building a coach for, every normal little person out here. He built for the king and queen. The company has a Wikipedia page, but his ancestor does not. So that means his ancestor's not notable, but the company is. Thanks, John.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm ready, and basically, one little piece of information here too is, I put these individuals up, and then I kind of typically back off, and my team puts them all together. So I'm not necessarily active in all of these putting these biographies together. I have a really solid team of people that
You
do the
do.
research. So if I'm a little rusty on some of the individuals, that's why. It's because I didn't necessarily work on these profiles. But and Tenor Furman, he was an anthropologist in Haiti during. He died in 1911, so he was um, working in the 1800s. He was
Mhm.
an African descendant, and he was the first to publish information that, or the argument that Black people were basically equal to white people, that you're anthropologically speaking, your race doesn't have anything to do with your abilities. Manuel Amador Guerrero. Let's see, get a refresher on who he was.
I bet you guys are glad that I didn't do bingo trivia today.
Yeah, I'm not even seeing him on my list. I know I gave you the name.
Well, that's all right. We will move
Okay, there he
on.
is. Oh,
Oh,
of
there you go.
course. All right. So here's the reason I don't know him. So he was the first president of Panama.
Oh,
Um, and in and of himself, he wasn't all that famous, but his wife
oh,
sewed
that's
the
right.
first flag of Panama, and his son wrote the national anthem. And when he died, they moved to Paris. They were exiled basically to Paris, and then his wife moved to North Carolina. So his wife kind of became a Southern belle, and his family's all still back there in North Carolina, and that's how we made the connection.
And you never knew.
Constantine Enriquez was a Olympic athlete from Haiti, and he went to France and participated on the um, I believe it was the cricket team. If Yeah, I believe it was cricket. Um, but he was the very first Black Olympic gold medal winner.
Oh, cool.
Um, Carlos Severa Lamas, and he was, I believe, I thought I had these down better. Um, he was the very first Latin American to win a Nobel Peace Prize.
Oh, wow.
One of the things I want to tell you, we didn't say this up front. Every one of these names, um, are team connected to the big tree. So these are not the people that we're still working on. We've connected about a third of our notables. And again, these are all very obscure countries we're working in, so that's
That's
pretty impressive. I
fantastic.
give kudos to the team on these. Jose Maria Sobral. So he was, okay, he was an Arctic explorer. He was from Argentina, and during the 1800s, he was one of the first individuals to visit Antarctica. Jacques Romain.
I'm so glad you're saying the names.
Yes. I don't know a lot about him other than he was a Argentine. No, I'm sorry. He was Haitian. He was a Haitian author. He was a Marxist author back when Marxism was kind of in its infancy, and that was a trend back then.
This
Michelle
was
Yeoh.
easy.
I think
Yeah.
most people do know Michelle Yeoh. Now, this is an example. We'll talk afterwards about our living notables. Um, I made an exception for her. She's Malaysian. Um, and when we were doing Malaysian notables, she had just won the Academy Award the week before. We went to Malaysia, and I thought there's no way we can not
I agree.
attach her. We got her attached. One other thing I will say, she comes from a little village in Malaysia, and her cousin has opened up um, a family museum.
Oh,
It's an actual full museum dedicated strictly to their family. and people paid admission to come in and
To
look
go
at
and see.
her family tree and their old pictures because she comes from a very notable family in her Malaysian community. They're mayors and local leaders and prominent people. So um, this name I'm going to just say as Huda.
Buddha,
I'm
yeah.
not going to say the last name.
And a
Um,
lot of you probably recognize this name too.
yeah, she was the try to look at her dates here. Yeah, she was in the early 1900s. She was a feminist leader in Egypt, and she married one of her children married um, a princess, the daughter of the granddaughter, I think, of the king, and so we were able to connect her through the royal family of
That's
Egypt.
like a double
And
notable, a royal
oh, and this is something you'll find with all of our, not all of them, but the vast majority of our notables are related to other notables. We don't know. In fact, some of our notables, when I picked the 15, have been related to each other, and I had no clue. They might be second or third cousins,
wow.
but we've traced them to the same, two Haitian notables both have the same great grandfather, who then we've traced to the United States or England or whatever. So the path winds up overlapping, and that's been pretty cool. I think we actually had three that were related to each other when we were doing Panama, I believe it was. So that was it. Did I do Thomas de Herrera? No, let's see. Who is Thomas de Herrera? I believe he's one of our early ones. Yes. Oh, okay. So we did the president of Panama, I mentioned. He was the president of what was called the State of the Isthmus and the Republic of New Granada. That was the precursor to Canada, to Panama. So he was very briefly in office, but he in a very short-lived uh,
Notable.
country. But
Right.
so Dr. Yvonne Sylvain, I believe it's pronounced. She's one who was related to our other notables. She herself was the first female physician in Haiti. And if I recall, the Marxist author we talked about
Mhm.
momentarily ago, they were distantly related. So we made the connection for both of them at the same time. Cincinnatus LeConte. He was a president of Haiti. And the reason that I chose him, we try to, if we can, um, connect with other projects. Cincinnatus LeConte had a son who he sent to France. Um, and this is the 1800s, or early, I'm sorry, this is the early 1900s, because this would have been 1912 where and if you know 1912, you might be guessing what other project we connected to. Um, he was sent to France and he didn't do well in France.
Oh,
So his dad got him a job back in Haiti, said, get on the ship, come back to Haiti. So they got a first class ticket. They're an African American family, but the rumor has it they were able to pose as Southern European, Italian, or something. So they got a
really?
first class ticket. But on this trip, they were told it was his wife and two young daughters. They were told you can't sit with your children during meals. I don't know why, but that's what they were told. They said, well, then no, we're gonna switch to a second class ticket. They said, well, we don't have any second class tickets on this ship, but we could put you on this other ship here called the Titanic.
Oh no, I knew you were gonna go there. Oh
Yeah,
no.
yeah. I said, 1912. Um, they were the only African or Black family on the Titanic.
Oh my goodness.
And sadly, he was killed. He did not survive, but
Oh,
his wife and daughters did. And they went back to um, they went back to Haiti. I don't know if they ever actually made it back to Haiti, but the offer for his son to come back apparently didn't transfer to his wife and his grandchildren, so they wound up going back to France, and eventually ended up in the United States. So that's how we made our connections. But we were
oh.
able to connect it to the Titanic project. That's our second Titanic passenger or family that
And
we
again, you all know how I say this a lot, and this was a surprise to me, but this is the power of WikiTree. You never know. David starts this project at the beginning of the year, doesn't really know which country he's going to pick. Once he picks a country, doesn't know the notables he's going to pick, and boom, you're going back and you're working with other projects, and you're coming out with fantastic stories too. If
amazing
you're a
story.
history lover, I've always said this since the very beginning of the year. If you're a history lover, this project's for you because you can learn so much about other cultures, other languages, other people, and they all tie in to our global human race. So it's really great. So
Yeah.
Kathy's hubby, since we were bragging on her with Super Bowl, won bingo. And Kathy, I know you know the deal, but you're going to email Eowyn and she's going to hook you up with the prize, or hook your hubby up, I should say, with a prize. So congrats. Okay, so living notables. You wanted to mention about living notables.
Yeah, so we asked about the criteria for it was asked about the criteria for notables, and that's pretty simple. For living notables, it's the same criteria. The notability is the same. But the question is, can their profile be made public or not? So the criteria for the profile to be made public is that they not only have a Wikipedia page, but that it is presented in at least three language, and English counts as one, although it doesn't have to be English. If they've got three foreign language pages, that's fine also. And they have to have an immediate family member mentioned in their Wikipedia page. So that would be a parent, a spouse, a child, a first degree relative has to be mentioned. If that happens, then we can open it up. We do ask that the Notables project be added as a co-manager to all living notables. That allows us to, number one, we're able to keep a running list of the notables, a kind of a directory that we have. It allows us to make sure that privacy requirements are being maintained. And it also allows us to open up the profile if the person should pass away. Um, Members may be very active, create a profile and be active right now. 5 years later, when the individual passes
Mhm.
away or something comes up, they may or may not still be around on WikiTree, and it's a real hassle to have to um, contact a former member, wait to see if they get back to us. If not, contact an administrator to get the profile unlocked. Um, if we're on there, we can just take care of that. We don't typically get involved with developing profiles unless we just do it on our own. I do it for fun, but not as a profile manager. I mean, not as a project manager. Um, but we're not going to go in and mess with your profiles. We just want to be there, one, for security reasons, two, for so for accessibility. I will tell you, we just had a famous person who I will not mention their name, but they contacted me last week and said, please take my profile down. I don't want it up there. I'm not sure why, because there was nothing up there that wasn't on Wikipedia and all over the internet. But that's their right. And no questions asked. We took the profile down. Um, it's a lot harder to do that when an individual member is managing a profile individually. Um, so just again, for kind of legal reasons, privacy reasons, we do ask that we be added as a co-manager.
And I just
And
want
when we
to
are added
Let
as a
me pause
co-manager,
real
we can
quick,
then,
David. So when he
yes.
says this, he means go to the privacy tab in the profile, scroll
Mhm.
down, and on the notables page, on their project page, they have their Gmail, their Google Groups, excuse me, their Google Groups email.
Well,
And
it's
that's
our email.
what he's
Mhm.
asking you to do. And I know that every notable I create, I just add them to the trusted list. And that's, you don't necessarily want to be on the PM or on the PM of the profile if they're deceased in general. There's
If they're
certain
okay,
ones.
so if they're deceased, we
Yeah.
don't have to be on at all. You can put us on, but we don't have to be. We don't manage every notable profile. We do want to be on as a co-manager of every living
Moving one.
individual's profile. And as Sandy said, you just go on and enter our email address. It's on our project page, or you can email us and we can let you know. We can't post it on G2G, but we can send it to you private email if that's works for you. But you go in, you put us on the trusted list, then you go back and click to put us on as a project manager. And at that point, if you notify us, we can then open up the profile for public viewing. And at that point, we'll basically stay out of, again, we're not going to go in and
They're
mess
not
with your profiles.
babysitting you constantly. They're not looking over your shoulder as much, but I
Yeah,
can tell you, I think that a lot of WikiTreeers think that as a project leader, we have this master control thing, and we don't. You
yeah.
know, we help manage the project and have fun things that we do with it, but because of privacy laws are so strict that only the very upper levels of WikiTree have the admin ability. So if you add notables on that privacy tab for living people as the PM, it just makes life a lot easier, especially if they become deceased and you want it opened up pretty quick. Which
Or, for example, this living notable that just contacted me, if I wasn't on there, they're going to be contacting you. From there, and it wasn't him that contacted me, so I didn't get to meet the celebrity. It was his attorneys that contacted me.
oh, have fun.
So if you, yeah, if you don't want to deal with his attorneys, um, put a project on there, and we'll be able to take care of it for you. So, and that's very rare, but it happened. So yeah, we're not trying to take over. We have 60,000 notables on WikiTree. Scott and I do not oversee every one of them, but
Oh, come on. You don't look at every
yeah.
60,000 every day to see what changes we're making to.
Um, but we do get if there's alert, if there's
Yeah.
a red flag comes up on a profile and it's not connected to the notables, then we don't get it. You'll get it and have to deal with it. So it just gives us a little bit of ability to help out if we need to. Okay, so um, why don't
So
we pick? Okay,
you
go ahead.
want to pick a profile or do you want to go to bingo?
Well, Um, oh, either way, I don't know what time we got. We're kind of running low on time, so why don't we go to bingo and then we
Okay.
can wrap up.
I will say this. I did like this namesake of Murphy's Law. And yes, his name is
I was
Murphy.
just going to suggest that one.
Yeah, this is funny. We'll bring it up just very briefly, just so you can
Okay.
see, because your team does an incredible job with this. I think that you need to show off some of these profiles. This is just cool. This was
Yeah, and I really want to emphasize, very
yeah,
rarely is it me, it's the team. I get it started, but they put these together. When I create a profile, I put up a name, a birthday, a death date in place, and that's it. Um, they
just
do
the bare
everything else.
bones.
Yeah,
And
you will
and
not get. I deliberately don't put any relatives up. I don't put. Well, I will put like a one sentence biography. He was the first president of Panama. That's it. Um, but the team creates the profiles. So Murphy is the individual who came up with Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. The interesting thing is what he was trying to say was be prepared. Um, it's kind of come up as a negative, um,
almost joke.
pessimistic
Yeah, yeah.
expression. But what he was saying is, he was an engineer, an aerospace engineer, and he was like saying, "But you better be prepared for anything that can go wrong because your airplane's going to crash if you
I was
didn't
just getting
prepare
ready
for
to
it."
say,
So
as an aerospace engineer, I
yeah,
would like him
yeah.
to be prepared.
But he was always disappointed that it took on that negative connotation as an expression of pessimism.
Okay, you guys ready for the next card? Everybody have the card up. And again, real easy to play. Horizontal, diagonal, vertical. Just get one of those rows. There's not a free space. If you've won in the past 6 months, you cannot win again till your anniversary. Click the mouse to do the dab. Okay, let's go through this fairly quick. Oh, there you go. Have fun.
Thank you. Um, oh, and I just clicked off my thing here. Okay, so this is
I love the name.
yeah, and I just want to make sure I get these right because some of these names start to blur together with their yeah, this is absent. Oh, this is yeah, she was a little bit later. She was the Queen of Malaysia.
Oh, how cool.
And the reason I picked her on well, much of the royal family's living, and so I wanted a connection to the royal family. So I had to go back a little bit away from the current king and find a deceased relative. And the reason I chose her was specifically for her name. Her name, this is her abbreviated name.
Oh,
Her name is, let me see, I can't say it, but I will count it. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 words long.
oh,
And they all look like that. Um, and what it is that some of it's her title, some of it is her husband, her father's name. So we used it to kind of learn how to break down a Malaysian name and interpret it. Here you've got Edward Murphy, we just talked about.
we just talked about, so that
Murphy's
was
Law.
good timing. And I put that and also in the chat the link that I just showed of the page that had the pictures of each individuals, and you'll find a lot of these people that we're talking about today in bingo on that page.
Mhm. Um, Arias Madrid. Okay, so he was a president of Panama. He was interesting um, in that he was president 3 times, and he got thrown out by a military coup each time,
Oh
and
my.
each time he came back. So that was kind of cool. Um, Grace Ogot. So Grace Ogot was Kenyan. She was a early, I won't say a feminist leader, but she was an early female leader
Mhm.
in Kenyan politics. She was one of the first women to hold public office in Kenya. Um, Juan Manuel I don't know if he says Fangio. He was a early race car driver.
Oh, how cool.
Um, he was from, I'm going to double check it here. Yeah, he was from Argentina. He was a Formula One driver and if you're into Formula One, you probably heard of him. If you're not, you may not have. Um, call me a Baba.
Add them to sports
I,
notable. You guys are Formula One drivers.
yeah, let me find this guy here. Okay. Oh, okay. So he was a nuclear scientist from India. So again, I
Impressive.
try to keep a variety
Yeah,
of careers and areas of notability.
you
So
really
you got a
did. This is
scientist.
just fabulous history.
Yeah. P. Romilly. I believe he is a writer. Filmmaker. He's from Malaysia. He was an actor, filmmaker, singer, and composer. The interesting thing about him was he was not famous in Malaysia. He was from Malaysia, lived in Malaysia, but he was famous in all the surrounding areas, Singapore
Hmm.
and the other nations. But he was never famous in Malaysia until he died, and then he became kind of a cult phenomenon. So he is famous now in Malaysia, but
You never
not so
got
much
to
while
see
he
it.
was living. Yeah.
Wow.
Faustin Workus. And okay, I just want to make sure I got him correctly because he has a fascinating story. He was a U.S. Marine. He went to Haiti, and back then, this was prior to World War II. Um, Went to Haiti and went to a island that still had a queen, and the queen took a fondness to him, not a romantic fondness, but she just really liked him, so she made him the king. So for 3 years, he was the king of this island in Haiti. And then when his term of service was up, the Marines called him back. So he abdicated and moved back to the United States. But
That's
he
fantastic.
just got he just got to be the king of this island for three
I did
years.
not know as a king your term is up. Well, this is
Yeah,
disappointing for me. How am I ever
yeah.
going to be a
Well,
queen of an island if I got to give
yeah.
it up? Do I keep the crown?
But yeah, that was a fascinating. This one most people should know on Where Else
Yeah.
Not. We got him connected. There's a lot of really famous people, particularly from less research countries like Egypt, etc., who just they're not on WikiTree. So
Yeah,
that's
this is
always kind of
shocking
cool.
that he
Yeah, that's
wasn't.
kind of
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, that's kind of cool when we get some of these famous people. Isabel Sarli was an actress. She was
Mm.
um, kind of the Marilyn Monroe of Argentina. She lived from 1929 to 2019, so 1900s. But she was a not an international star necessarily, but a big star in Argentina. Abdul Rahman was a Malaysian prime minister, I believe the first prime minister of Malaysia. So again, we try to get the famous people. Jomo Kenyatta was the first president of Kenya. I always find it's interesting when their country's in their name. We have a few of those, but
That is
yeah.
interesting. Is it because they had such long-standing notability and ancestry lines, or it just
You
happened?
know, I couldn't tell you in this particular case. I do know that in some cases we have, I don't know if she's on this one, but Lisa Ukrainia
Mhm.
um, from Ukraine, and she did take that as a pen name. It wasn't her birth name.
That's pretty
So
cool. And we've got another bingo. Kathy, we need to all move to your house. You've got a lucky clover or lucky quarter or a penny. So I'm going to tell you again, if you email Eowyn, she will get in touch with you about how to claim your prize and go from there. So congratulations to the novice today. That's pretty cool. I think
yeah, so
the
here's a lesson. If you got family members, get them on WikiTree, and you can get a whole collection of mugs.
You really can. And Kathy is pointing out something too. You do not have to be a WikiTree member to win at bingo. Anybody can win at bingo, member or not. So there's that too. But I like David's plan. Get them on WikiTree, have them do some of the inputting, the sourcing, the connecting, the bios, and bingo as well. Well, David, let me, as we wind up, let me ask you just a really important, thoughtful question. What have you learned the most about doing a 15 nations tour with WikiTree? Because we haven't had anything like this before. This is pretty groundbreaking.
So it's amazing what I've learned, and we played it up just kind of as a gimmick to be a world tour. And in the
Mhm.
beginning, we talked about like taking the boat to the next country, and we've got a passport you can get. So, but I realized as this is all done, it's as if I've been on a world tour. I have learned so much about these 15, well, the 11 countries we've been to so far that I didn't know. And so just from out of a curiosity, somebody who likes history, it's been interesting um, to learn the details of other nations' history.
Mhm.
Um, I'm from the United States. Our primary team members that have been with us from the beginning, most of them are not from the United States. We've got members from Canada, New
Really?
Zealand, Australia. Um, the vast majority are not American, but they are kind of Western. I won't say Eastern European, but Western countries. Um, and we learn, at least in the United States, we learn world history from a U.S. perspective. So when I'm researching Kenya and doing family history, I'm researching it from a Kenyan perspective. And when I'm looking at notables, these are people that made their name, in Kenya or in
Yeah.
Malaysia or wherever, not people that immigrated to the United States and became famous Americans. So you start to learn, you start to see how the individual lives cross over into the political spectrum. So when there is a revolution, for example, when we were in India, um, when India and Pakistan broke apart, individuals had to decide, are you going to go live in Pakistan or are you going to live in India? And some of our
Yeah.
individuals who had nothing to do with politics, but they were forced to make that decision. And one of our individuals, she's an actress, and her husband took off for Pakistan and left her with the children in India. Um, so that political event that I'm aware of, I wasn't aware of from the perspective of an individual family that was faced with having to make that kind of decision. And I find that in country after country. Um, so many of these countries have recent histories of revolution or at least peaceful breakaways from colonial powers.
Mhm.
And the people were impacted by that. And the actors and actresses and singers, just like our folk singers in the 60s, and, they were writing songs about independence. And, so it's just a fascinating look at the world that you don't get, taking a history class at American University or high school
Yeah.
or wherever. So that's the biggest takeaway for
Take
me.
away.
And then there's just practical stuff, learning the languages. Not so much the languages, but enough to interpret, the naming patterns, those kinds of things. So there's a lot of practical stuff that I've learned as well. But if you're interested in history, it's been much more than I ever
Mhm.
expected.
And I want to point out again that there are 4 more coming
We have
up,
4 more countries to go,
and
so plenty of time to join in.
nobody knows what they are. Sometimes, as
Yep,
David said, sometimes he changes at the very last minute, depending on who you can find notable. So there's really no advanced prep that you can do. You just jump in. The people who have been doing this, you've had a great team. You've had some random people like me. I
you
randomly
just
helped
jump
out
in
in
and
the
out, and
Panama,
that's
come
fine.
in and out.
Yeah,
So it was fun. It was interesting to learn a different culture and the history of the people. And I will tell you, I was thrilled that you picked Murphy because that was the first one I created for your 15 nations. So I had no clue. I had no idea. So jump in. If you're interested, jump in. You still have 4 more to go, and it's really really interesting and fun to learn about the different cultures and just the human race as we talk global. And that's what we're doing today. We're talking global. So if you have joined us live, thank you so much again. I really appreciate you guys that come to bingo and ask questions and have fun and win, the cool mug, the cool prizes and things like that. But I also love the engagement that I get with our guests because I always learn something new as well. And since we're talking global, then later on in our second bingo today is a big surprise announcement. We're not going to tell you what it is. Extremely few people know what it is, but we will tell you at the next bingo. So make sure that you attend. And David will be here to tell us what that surprise is.
yes.
So thanks, David, for joining
And
us
just to absolutely double emphasize to people, you need no experience to
at
participate.
all. You didn't know
Nobody
language
knows where we're going.
experience, right?
And we wind up, we had a king of Kenya who was descended from a native tribe. He went to school in England, married a British woman. They divorced. She married a man from Oklahoma. So here we are doing research in the Oklahoma censuses, trying to make our Kenya connection. So there's a lot of familiarity that winds up popping into it too. So don't be intimidated to come in, and we'll walk you through what you need to do.
And if you ever get stuck, like I said, David has a lot of people who worked on every single one and very friendly bunch, very mentoring, very friendly bunch,
Very,
which I
very
really,
good
really
working
love
together.
too. So we will see everybody in a couple hours. And if you're watching this after the fact, after live, thanks for clicking and make sure everybody click on the thumbs up to give us a like. I appreciate you guys. See you soon.
Bye, everybody.